Seattle's elite sip champagne in a fortress of glass and lies, where poison truths flow smoother than aged whiskey. Meet Everett Holloway, tech titan with an empire built on secrets, and Seraphina Voss, his wife, whose emerald gown hides more than her porcelain skin. But when a street-smart teen named Jalen Mercer witnesses a vial of glowing liquid vanish into a billionaire's glass, the glittering facade cracks. Betrayal, corporate espionage, and a deadly game of saviors and sinners collide. And this is only the beginning. Think you know who to trust? Think again. Hit subscribe now because the next twist will leave you breathless. The Obsidian Lounge glittered like a black diamond against Seattle's steel-gray skyline. Its tinted windows, specially imported from Switzerland, reflected the city lights in fragmented rainbows while effectively shielding its privileged patrons from prying eyes. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over tables adorned with baccarat glassware, where Seattle's elite gathered to celebrate their success. At table 7, Everett Holloway sat with his usual air of authority. His tailored Brioni suit, worth more than what most people earned in a year, seemed almost casual on his athletic frame. The tech mogul had built his empire from nothing, or so the legend went. Now 42, his sharp features and piercing blue eyes commanded respect, while his perfectly coiffed silver hair spoke of calculated power. Across from him, Seraphina Voss embodied elegance itself. Her emerald green gown flowed like liquid silk, complementing her porcelain skin and raven-black hair. Yet something about her smile never reached her eyes, those captivating eyes that seemed to hold secrets too dangerous to share. She moved with deliberate grace, each gesture precise as if performing an ancient ritual. Another successful quarter. Everett raised his glass, voice rich with satisfaction. Our AI systems now control 30% of global financial transactions. Seraphina's lips curved upward, but her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her moat and Shandon. Outside, the rain began tapping against the windows like nervous fingers, though neither seemed to notice. The restaurant's sophisticated clientele maintained their practiced conversations, each table a stage for displays of wealth and influence. Through the misted glass, 17-year-old Jalen Mercer watched this world he could never touch. His worn leather jacket and scuffed boots marked him as one of Pioneer Square's forgotten children. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but tonight he wasn't searching for scraps. The real danger lurked in the shadows behind him, members of the Iron Fang gang who'd marked him for death after he'd witnessed something he shouldn't have. Jalen pressed closer to the window, fogging the glass with his breath. Inside, he saw lives so different from his own lives where basic survival wasn't a daily battle. But beyond the glamour, he sensed something darker lurking beneath the surface of this perfect world. Something that made the fine hairs on his neck stand up, even as he tried to convince himself it was just the cold. Through the condensation on the window, Jalen's breath caught as he witnessed something that made his blood run cold. Seraphina's elegant hand reached into her emerald clutch, retrieving a small vial of luminous green liquid. Her movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as she measured 3 precise drops into Everett's glass. The streetlights flickered above Jalen's head, casting erratic shadows across his gaunt face. He pressed closer to the glass, ignoring the biting cold seeping through his worn jacket. The scene unfolding before him defied logic. How could such an elegant woman, dining in Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, be capable of something so sinister? Yet everything about her actions screamed calculated intent. Jalen's mind raced through possibilities. He remembered stories from the Iron Fang gang about corporate espionage reaching deadly levels. But this was different. Seraphina's expression held none of the malice one would expect from a poisoner. Instead, her eyes glistened with what looked like genuine concern, her lips moving in what appeared to be a silent prayer. Everett raised his glass, completely unaware of the drama playing out at his table. Jalen's heart pounded against his ribs. Should he warn this man? Would anyone even believe a street kid over one of Seattle's most powerful couples? The rain intensified, running down the window in rivulets that distorted the golden glow of the restaurant interior. Inside, Seraphina watched her husband with an unreadable expression. She knew the risks of what she was doing, knew that if discovered, it would destroy everything they had built together. Yet she remained calm, her poise unshaken. The green liquid shimmered in Everett's glass like captured moonlight, holding secrets that could unravel both their lives. Jalen's fingers trembled against the cold glass. He had to make a decision: stay hidden and safe, or risk everything to prevent what might be a tragedy. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a nobody from Pioneer Square, holding knowledge that could alter the course of Seattle's elite society. The silence that followed Jalen's desperate warning was deafening. "Don't drink it." His voice cracked against the refined atmosphere of the Obsidian Lounge like shattered glass. Patrons turned in unison, their faces a mixture of shock and disdain directed at the disheveled teenager now pressed against the restaurant's window. Inside, Seraphina's reaction was immediate but calculated. She threw back her head and laughed, a sound that carried through the stunned silence like crystal chimes in a storm. "This poor boy," she said, her voice carrying just the right amount of concern mixed with condescension. "He's an escapee from the rehabilitation center down the street. Must be hallucinating from withdrawal." Her words triggered a wave of murmurs among the diners, each one eager to dismiss the interruption and return to their carefully curated evening. Yet something about her performance didn't sit right with Jalen. He noticed how her fingers trembled ever so slightly against the tablecloth, how her eyes darted momentarily toward a woman in a violet cloak sitting 3 tables away before returning to her composed smile. That woman, Odette, hadn't turned away with the others. Beneath her hood, her sharp eyes studied Seraphina with intense scrutiny. Her gloved hand rested near her clutch, where a small vial similar to the one Seraphina had used earlier seemed to bulge against the fabric. Jalen caught this detail just as Everett dismissed his outburst with a wave of his hand. "Young man," Everett called out, his voice carrying authority tempered with false kindness. "I appreciate your concern, but I assure you." His words trailed off as Jalen, driven by instinct he couldn't explain, burst through the restaurant's door. Security guards moved to intercept him, but he slipped between them with the agility of someone who'd spent years navigating Seattle's streets. In those crucial seconds, multiple things happened simultaneously. Jalen lunged toward Everett's table while Seraphina reached for her husband's hand. Odette stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. And Everett, perhaps out of defiance or simply tired of the disruption, raised his glass and drained its contents in one swift motion. The moment Everett swallowed the last drop of his poisoned drink, chaos erupted in the Obsidian Lounge. Seraphina's carefully constructed facade shattered as she lunged across the table, her emerald gown tangling around her legs. "You don't understand." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I had to neutralize the toxin they forced me to put in your drink." Before anyone could process her words, Odette's chair clattered to the floor. She stepped forward, her violet cloak swirling dramatically. "She's lying," Odette declared, her voice cutting through the commotion like a scalpel. "That green liquid was the antidote for strychnine, the very poison I placed in Everett's glass." Jalen stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend the twisted web of betrayal unfolding before him. The security guards who had been advancing toward him now hesitated, unsure where the real threat lay. Through the restaurant's windows, red and blue police lights began flashing, reflecting off the crystal chandeliers in a surreal dance of colors. Everett gripped the edge of the table, his face pale but composed. He looked from his wife to Odette, then to Jalen, as if trying to piece together reality from the fragments of deception surrounding him. Seraphina reached for her husband's hand, but he pulled away, his expression unreadable. "I only wanted to save you," Seraphina whispered, tears streaming down her face. "From her." She pointed at Odette. "Your former business partner. The one who drove my father's company to ruin." Odette's laugh was bitter and cold. "Your father's incompetence was his own undoing. I merely exposed the truth." She turned to Everett. "And you, my dear, were blind to see how she's been manipulating you all these years." The morning sun pierced through Seattle's characteristic mist, casting long shadows across Everett's penthouse office. Medical reports confirmed what Odette had revealed: traces of strychnine in his system, neutralized by the green liquid Seraphina had administered. Yet the poison running through Everett's veins now came from a different source, the poison of betrayal and mistrust. Detectives led Odette away in handcuffs, her violet cloak trailing behind her like fallen royalty. Through the glass walls of the skyscraper, Jalen watched as reporters gathered below like vultures circling their prey. He had refused Everett's offer of an internship, his pride too strong to accept what he perceived as charity. "You're right," Everett admitted, his voice heavy with newfound humility. "Wealth doesn't make us immune to deception." He stared at the cityscape beyond his window, seeing it with different eyes now. The glittering towers seemed less impressive, more like golden cages housing their inhabitants' illusions of safety and power. Seraphina began packing her belongings, each folded garment a page turned in their shared history. Her hands trembled as she placed photographs into boxes, memories of happier times before corporate espionage had poisoned everything, both literally and figuratively. She left a single letter on Everett's desk, its weight heavier than its physical presence suggested. Through it all, Jalen observed from the shadows of the penthouse, his street-smart instincts telling him there was more to this story than met the eye. The pieces didn't quite fit together neatly, like a puzzle missing crucial elements. Something about Seraphina's actions still didn't add up, despite the evidence against Odette. Rain drizzled against the windows of Everett's now empty penthouse, each droplet tracing paths down the glass like tears. The city lights below blurred into golden streaks, mirroring the distorted reality he had lived for years. Power and wealth had created an illusion of control, but in truth, he had been as vulnerable as any street kid in Pioneer Square. Seraphina's letter lay open on his desk, its words burning brighter than neon signs in his mind. Sometimes villains wear heroic masks, while saviors bear the faces of sinners. Her elegant handwriting seemed to dance across the page, mocking him with its grace. She hadn't poisoned him out of malice. She had been trying to save him from Odette's vengeance for business dealings that had destroyed her family's empire. Jalen wandered through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, his steps lighter than they had been weeks ago. He understood now that power wasn't about money or position, it was about choices. Seraphina had chosen to protect her husband despite the cost to herself. Everett had chosen to trust too easily. And he, Jalen, had chosen to speak out when everyone else remained silent. The Iron Fang gang still prowled Pioneer Square, but Jalen no longer feared them. His warning at the Obsidian Lounge had triggered events leading to their exposure by police. Their leader had been arrested for orchestrating corporate espionage through forced manipulation of executives' families. Standing beneath a flickering street lamp, Jalen smiled not with triumph, but with understanding. The rich could be deceived just as easily as the poor, their gilded cages offering no real protection. And sometimes salvation came disguised as betrayal. As the rain washes Seattle's sins into the shadows, one question lingers. Who poisoned the poisoner? Seraphina's letter holds a clue, Odette's smirk hides a secret, and Jalen's instincts scream that this isn't over. The rich may fall, but their enemies rise quieter and deadlier. Stay tuned. The real game starts when the lights go out. Don't dare miss what happens next.